Hello, welcome to Chef Richard's Kitchen. On this episode, we're going to be doing stuffed pork chops. And stuffed pork chops is something that's extremely easy to make. It doesn't take a lot. Pork and chicken are fairly inexpensive, and it's always good for, an evening dinner. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to start out with the stuffing. Now, for the stuffing, it's going to be just basically a spinach and sun-dried tomato stuffing. And normally, I'd probably cook my own spinach, but in this case, I got lazy. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to use the frozen spinach. But when you do that, you got to remember to thaw it, and then you have to kind of remove the water from it. Alright, so first off, let's go ahead and put it on the strainer. And you can see there's quite a bit of water getting out of it. Now I'm going to go ahead and when I go ahead and put it back into the stuffing, I need to liquefy it a little bit. And I'm going to use chicken stock for that. And you're going to ask, well, why are you taking all the water out of the spinach and going to put back in chicken stock? Well, the big reason there is just mainly because I think the chicken stock makes it taste better. And that's the sole reason. If you like the spinach taste better, for heaven's sakes, then go ahead and use the spinach liquid. All right. All right, there's our spinach. And you notice that's quite a bit of liquid they got taken out. All right, now let's go ahead and let's start. And I want to start by putting a little olive oil in, and I want to saute a clove of garlic. And after a couple of minutes, when the garlic becomes fragrant, I want to put in, a little bit of onion, and I want to saute that until it's translucent. Then I can start building the I can build the stuffing. All right. So now that we're over here at the stove, I'm going to go ahead and turn the stove up. And I'm going to saute the garlic. Okay, I can start hearing the garlic saute in here. So we don't want it to burn. We want it to saute a little bit till it gets a little golden, which is going to add to the flavor. We don't want to let it get too golden or it's going to burn. All right? It's become fragrant right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the onion. And we're going to saute this now until the onion's translucent or slightly caramelized. I'm going to add a little bit of butter to this. I used a little olive oil for the sauteing. Now I'm using the butter just simply because I like the taste. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the spinach. And I'm going to add a little bit of chicken stock. For right now, all I want to do is I want to put in about 1/4 cup. Not very much at all. We may have to go back and revisit this and put in a little more, but that's okay. Now I have about 1/2 cup of Fontina cheese. Fontina cheese, if you've ever had brie, Fontina cheese is very similar to brie. It has a very, very mellow taste. It's a creamy cheese, easily melted, and it's really, really great for things like stuffing. All right. Now, I'm going to put just a little bit of cream cheese in this as well. And that's because I don't want the Fontina, even though it's a very mild cheese, I don't want it to be overpowering at all because spinach is not overpowering. So I'm going to put in just a little bit of cream cheese. All right. That's about 1/4 cup. Now, this is at room temperature, so it isn't going to take a real long time to melt, but it will take a little time. And I see we're kind of getting to the point where it's getting a little dry again. So I'm going to add just a little more chicken stock. I could have also added butter. And that would be fine. If you like that, go ahead and use it. All right, there. The cream cheese is about melted now. Now it's time for our last real ingredient, and that's the sun-dried tomatoes. And I've used sun-dried tomatoes, and as you can see, this is just a julienne variety. Chop them up however you like. But they add a very, very good flavor to this. All right. All right, now I want to add a little kosher salt, a little bit of pepper, and just a little bit of sprinkle of cayenne pepper. There. We don't want to add heat. We don't want to add heat to our stuffing. But cayenne pepper in very, very small bits will actually add a brightness to it that actually helps the flavor. And so I tend to want to put just a little pinch, not more than that, just a pinch of cayenne pepper to just kind of liven it up a little bit. All right? Now, the last thing we do before we declare this done, we've got to taste it. Remember, don't ever serve anything to guests that you haven't tasted. Great. That's really good, if I do say so myself. And I do. Okay, now it's time. Let's go ahead and let's cut our pork chops. And before I do that, I want to start the oven preheating at 350 degrees. Now we're going to slice our pork chops. And notice I got them extremely thick. And the thicker, well, probably the better, but not really. About, what is this, an inch and a half? That's fine. That's great. That's about the perfect size that I like them. Take your knife, and I want you to cut all the way through, all the way back to the bone. All right, like this. But I don't want you to cut all the way back to here. I don't, because I want this to keep a pocket. Now do the same with this one. Okay. There's our pockets. Now, what I'm going to do is first off, I'm going to wash my hands, get the pork fat off of it. The first thing we're going to do is we want to brown these. And we could go ahead and we could stick them in the oven just the way they are like this. It'd cook, they'd get the stuffing would get cooked, and they'd be fine. But I want more than that. I want it to taste a little better than that, so we're going to go ahead and brown it. Let me wash my hands and we'll go ahead and do that. Alright, let's let the pan heat up here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little butter in here. And I want to use butter once again because I kind of like the flavor a little better than olive oil. And for this case, it'll brown it well. If I'm going to use it at a much higher temperature, I'd rather use olive oil. But for this, butter will be fine. Alright, now that our butter's melted, let's go ahead and put our chops in. Alright, and let's just let them brown for a few minutes. They're getting there. Just give it another minute or two on this side, and then let's flip it over.
let's do the second side. Now, why didn't I go ahead and put the lid over the saute skillet? Well, it would keep the heat in and it would help cook it faster. The thing is, I want to brown it, not steam it. And if I put that in, any of the moisture that's coming from the outside of the chop would be in there, and it would do more steaming than it would actually browning. So I'm leaving it off. Also, in the bottom of this, we'll find that there gets to be a bunch of the brown bits, and that's called flan. And there's an awful lot of flavor in this flan. And so once we go ahead and brown these, we take it off. We'll probably, when we put it back in the oven, we'll make sure that flan actually gets on some of the meat in here. The oven's preheated. That's what the beef is for. All right, the chops have gone ahead and they've browned nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them back in this baking pan because I want them to
cool down. I want to put in some carrots. And the cardinal sin, and you never want to serve just an entree to guests. You always want to serve it with a couple of side dishes, usually a starch and usually a vegetable. In this case, I'm not going to make a starch, but I do want to make a little vegetable. So I'm going to put some carrots in water. We're going to steam them, and we're going to make glazed carrots, and we're going to serve them with it. Now, while we wait for the water to heat up, now you'll notice when we get into our pork here, we'll notice that it's still pretty pink inside. Well, good, that's how we want it, because when it bakes, it's going to cook that along with the stuffing. We didn't want to cook it. We didn't want to cook it all the way when we were just browning it. So there's one. And there's two. So now let's go ahead, and I want to put our chops back in the skillet again. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to put this in the oven, and we're going to bake it. We're going to bake it at 350 for probably about 15 to 20 minutes, something like that, until everything's done. And I've always been a firm believer in don't guess, get out the thermometer and make darn well sure that everything is right. So into the oven we go. And I'm going to set the timer for about 15 minutes. All it's been about 15 minutes. Let's go ahead, let's take the temperature of the chops and let's see where we stand. All right, let me pull them out. Well, those are looking really good, but are they done? No, they're not. They're up to probably, 100, they're up to about probably 130, something like that. We want it higher than that for pork. Now remember, when we take pork out of the oven and let it rest, the internal temperature is going to continue to rise. So we probably want it up about 145, 150, something like that, so that when it rises, we can be sure it's well done. Now, the Department of Agriculture says that at 155, the trichinae worms are killed in there. There's a lot of people, including myself, that really don't want a medium rare pork chop. So go ahead, let it go up a little bit, and when the brown or when the pink is gone, or at least it's mostly gone, then you know it's done. Everybody's going to accept that. But don't go so high as, you cook the moisture and everything else out of it either. That's just as bad. So we'll give it another 5 minutes or so, and we'll check the temperature again. All right, it's been about time, so let's go ahead and let's check the chops again and see what the temperature is. If they're around 155, preferably about 160, we're going to go ahead and pull them out and let them rest. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to glaze our carrots, and then we'll be ready to plate. All right, the temperature is about 160, so let's go ahead and pull these out and let them rest. Now, I've already gone ahead and I've checked the carrots, put a fork in them. They're quite tender, so let's go ahead and let's drain them and put some glaze on them, which is really put some butter and some seasoning. Are we still going? Yep. All right, it's been about time, so let's go ahead and let's check the chops again and see what the temperature is. If they're around 155, preferably about 160, we're going to go ahead and pull them out and let them rest. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to glaze our carrots, and then we'll be ready to plate. All right, the temperature is about 160, so let's go ahead and pull these out and let them rest. Now, I've already gone ahead and I've checked the carrots, put a fork in them. They're quite tender, so let's go ahead and let's drain them and put some glaze on them, which is really put some butter and some seasoning. Now, really anyone can serve boiled carrots. There's no big special thing to that. But why? Let's make glazed carrots. And really all that is just adding a little butter and some salt, pepper, and it makes a world of difference from just boiled. So let's go ahead and add some butter. Stir this around until the butter melts. There. That way the butter coats the carrots. It's much nicer. It has a much better mouthfeel to it. Put a little kosher salt in there. A little bit of pepper. Give it one last stir. And here we are. Now let's go ahead and plate. When we plate, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a chop on here and we're going to put some carrots. But as I've always told you, people eat with their eyes long before their taste buds ever get a chance to taste it. So we need to garnish it a little bit to make sure everything's fine. Now I've got a couple of different kinds of garnish here that I want to talk to you about. And one of them here is fennel. And you see, fennel has a very fine, leaf structure on it, as does dill. They're almost exactly alike, but the fennel tastes quite a bit different than the dill. The fennel actually has kind of a licorice taste to it, especially the bulb. Parsley, that we've all grown up with. It works very, very well. It makes things look really good. Green onions. For green onion garnish, go ahead and clip the green or the yellow part and the root off of it, back about half, and then come back and about 3 inches, 2 or 3 inches from the, where the blade or the leaves start, go ahead and chop that off. And you can always put those on. The nice thing about these is where some of the garnishes that we use may be a little bitter. You may not want to taste the dill. You may not want to taste the fennel. Onions are always good. And by the way, all of this is edible. So there's nothing I'll ever put on for a garnish that isn't edible. Here's something that's neat, and I've used it very, very sparingly, but I probably will more. And what this is it's a chive. And when the chives go past and it gets to fall, the chive wants to bloom. And what it does is it puts out this bloom, and this is what causes this. And this is very good, it's very pretty, and it will make an excellent garnish. Is it nice for garnish? Yes. Is it nice for taste? No. The flower part here is very bitter. You cut it off and you use the chives in your potato or something like that, but the bloom itself is very bitter. On the other hand, it's very impressive and it makes an excellent garnish. So, finally, we have radicchio. And radicchio is a red lettuce, or almost a red cabbage type, and this is good when you want to put something on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to put a little radicchio on the plate, and I'm going to put the carrots on that, because there's something that's going to just sit there and look and be nice until it's eaten. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of that on the radicchio. All right. Here we have the carrots. Now, what are we going to do with the stuffed chop? Well, first of all, we're going to put it on the plate. All right. Now that we have the chop on the plate, now we have to decide what we're going to do for garnish there. Should we use fennel? Should we use green onions? Should we use parsley? Or should we use our chive blooms? Well, I don't know. I kind of like the chive blooms, but on the other hand, I kind of like the green onions, for the sake that, you know, they're edible, they're much more tasty than these are. So what I'd kind of like to do here is I'd like to put a couple of green onions on and a little parsley, and let's go with that. How does that look? Now, remember, make sure your salt and your pepper shakers are on the table, because we want to make sure that our guests, if it's not seasoned enough, because I have a tendency, I want under-season. And I want under-season simply for the reason that there's a lot of people out there that can't have a lot of salt in their diet. So I'd much rather under-season it and let them be the ones that put the rest of it on. So for right now, I'm going to let it go at that. To me, I think that's an excellent meal, It's an excellent chop. It's an excellent carrot. I think you'll like it. Try it. Let me know. Drop me a note and say how much you liked it or how much you didn't like it. I don't care which. I always like feedback on these. But let me know what you think. In the meantime, take care, God bless, and remember the first thing I always tell you, and that's cooking should be fun. Remember that. Until next time.